Welcome to the Valley Girls, the weekly podcast where we explore everything there is to see, do, try, eat, and experience in New York's Hudson Valley by talking to the makers, the doers, the growers, the creators, and all the unique voices of the Hudson Valley. We're telling the Hudson Valley's story one episode at a time. I'm Jenny Leifer, a lifelong Hudson Valley resident. When I'm not co-hosting Valley Girls, you'll find me talking all about health and wellness, finding the best gluten-free eats in the Hudson Valley, and giving back to the community through volunteerism and service.
And I'm Jennifer Santiago, a Hudson Valley native who has spent the past 20 years living in Texas. I'm currently splitting my time between Texas and the Hudson Valley as I'm in the process of moving back, and I'm so excited to explore and rediscover everything I love about the region, including hiking, history, and the local arts scene.
Barbara Bravo is the coordinator of the Saugerties Artist Studio Tour, coming up on August 10th and 11th. Barbara, the Artist Studio Tour has been around since 2002. What was the original spark for the event, and how has it grown over the past 20 plus years?
Well, it was the brainchild of one of Saugerties' artists, and she just decided that she would be able to find money to support a studio tour. And she is one of these women who have endless ideas. I always say I'm glad I don't live in her mind. Um, so she started it with the help of her husband and a few other people. And we started with 11 artists. And
Wow.
over the past now 22 years, we have actually featured artists, approximately 175 Saugerties artists.
Oh
You know,
my goodness.
people come on the, they join the tour and then they decide whether or not it's for them. It's not for everyone. It's very rigorous. You have to be on for 2 whole days, greeting people into your private studio. So, it can be invasive to some people. So that's why we don't represent all artists that live here, but we do. This year we have 45, and it is the largest tour we have ever had.
That's incredible.
That is so exciting. We have been looking forward to this for months, maybe more than months, because last year at the Garlic Festival, we met Meredith Morabito, who is a Saugerties artist, and we are in love with her chipmunk photography. It is so whimsical. Her chipmunk Callie is like a Beatrix Potter illustration come to life. But I know that's only a small part of Meredith's art. And she also lives on a farm, and she has alpacas, and we cannot wait to hit the tour and visit Meredith. But so you have 45 other artists. Can you tell us just a few other highlights? I know you can't single out just a few out of 45, but so she does sculpture and she also does photography. So what other kinds of art and artists are featured on this year's tour?
Oh, yes, it is very varied. We do have other sculptors who work in steel, in industrial debris. Meredith works in clay. There's all kinds of media assigned within one type of art form. We have a lot of painters, again, working in all different media. Some of them will be working in oils, acrylics, watercolor. We have artists that do drawings and pastels. More people working in clay. I work in clay. I'm a potter. I've been a lifelong potter. And I'll be featuring some of that, as well as my painted paper collage work. So a lot of the artists, they cross over into other disciplines. Again, we have photography. One of our photographer actually specializes in videography. We have a lot of mixed media artists. Oh, the list just goes on, and I can't even remember them all. We have some fiber artists.
Oh, fiber artists, that's so cool. Is there something unique to Saugerties that just fuels all this creativity? The fact that there are even 45 artists on the tour, and that's not everybody in the Saugerties area. It's just, is there something in the water?
Saugerties is very attractive. It's a little different from other surrounding towns. I like to think we're a little bit more, I'm trying to think of a good term to use, more down to earth, as compared to some other places. It's a comfortable area to live in. It's fairly diverse, in terms of people's ways of thinking about things. And I've been here for 40 years, and it was a great decision on my husband and my part to move here. We fit in really well, and we've gotten very involved in the community. Saugerties thrives on volunteer work.
Mhm.
So I always think when people say, gee, what can I do with myself? I say, oh, well, there's all these organizations you can volunteer for. So
Yeah.
Love
it's a
that.
great place to live, and people are just drawn to it.
And it's interesting because I used to live in Saugerties. I live in Hurley now, which is
Mhm.
actually where I'm originally from. But, I think that Saugerties is a very interesting and unique town in and of itself because you do have the influence of, say, Woodstock right next door, right? You have the art. It has its own character, and as you
Yes.
said, very down to earth. So it
Mhm.
may have the influence of the surrounding artists colonies of the original Woodstock and all of that, and still the current day, but still holding on to its own character and its own
Mhm.
uniqueness. So is the
Yes.
is the art tour just the 2 days in August? Are there other events throughout the year that also
Yes,
celebrate local artists?
there's a fabulous event coming up in July. So we kick off about 6 weeks of featuring Saugerties artists and their art. We start that by having this fabulous show. We call it Art in the Barn, and it's sponsored by the Saugerties Historical Society on their property. It's a Dutch barn. It's a barn that was built originally in 1750 or thereabouts, and it's raw space. So we go in, we being the artists, as I mentioned, volunteers before, we're all volunteers. And we come together and we actually create this really fabulous environment. And we feature the artwork of all the artists that are going to be on the tour in August. And what's really wonderful about it, it gives the artists themselves an opportunity to really go big. They can show large sculptures. They can show fantastic canvases that you might not be able to feature in most places. And then, of course, we accommodate people that work on a smaller scale with these well-lit museum boards. So it's really an amazing gallery exhibit. And we'll be advertising it, so we'll be putting it out there very strongly. And usually we attract about 200 to 250 people on opening night.
So this episode, people will be hearing it on July 4th. And so we're in plenty of time for Art in the Barn. It looks like that runs from July 12th through the 28th.
Right.
So people can visit on weekends, Saturdays 11 to 5, Sundays 1 to 5. So there's lots of opportunities to get there. That's not just a one-day event.
Right. We will run it for those 3 weekends. And it's very easy to spot. We'll have banners outside, and that usually draws a lot of curiosity. People want to know what the banners are indicating. And it's really just a wonderful, amazing environment to have that opportunity to show the artwork. And again, the opening is on Friday, July 12th from 5 to 7.
So exciting. So what else should our listeners know about the art tour, especially the 2 days, the 10th and the 11th with the open studio tour? Where do we find the info? Is there a
Right.
best approach to maximizing the amount of things we can see over the course of that weekend?
Well, kudos to anybody who can visit 45 studios in 2 days.
Right. We're
That
determined.
um, I always like to think in terms of what a person's interest is. Somebody might really be keen on photography and
Mhm.
let's say another mixed media. You would go through the artist tour map or the artist tour website, which is saugertiesarttour.org. And you can begin to zero in on that media that's the most attractive to you and see which artists are presenting that. And you can circle them on the map and make your way to each of those studios. The maps are free. They're going to be available at quite a few locations, and we do have a list on the website.
Oh, great.
But the maps will be available at most Saugerties businesses that are in the village. They can always email me at bbravo@hvc.rr.com. And if there's time, I will put a map in the mail. And so even outside of Saugerties, we'll have maps in Kingston, Woodstock, across the river in Rhinebeck. And again, locally is probably the best way, and all of the artists will have maps at their studios. So if you spend a little time on our website, you'll see all the information is there. By clicking a few buttons, you can find everything you want.
I love the idea of just deciding, hey, I want to see pottery or I want to see photography. But I also like, for our journey, Jenny, maybe we see a little bit of everything. So we're going to do it on the Sunday. We're already planning this. We're going to see Meredith because we love her, and we're going to come see you. But then maybe we branch out and do, somebody who does sculpture with found objects, and then somebody who does photography. So we see a little bit of all different sorts of art and media.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I would love that. I mean, I think for me, it's hard to narrow down even, which media I would want to focus on. But yeah, I love that. Yeah, we'll definitely have to get a spattering of each.
Again, on our website, each artist has their own page. So you could look them up by name if you're familiar with their names, or you can look them up by media. And, you would just use the drop-down menu, click on media, and you would see all the potters, all the painters, all the sculptors. And then you can click on their pages. And we try to keep it brief. We don't let them run on for too long on the page. But there are sample photographs of their work. So that also helps to narrow things down.
That's so great. We're always so interested in the creative process, and we talk about this on many of our episodes. So just the opportunity to go into someone's space where they create and see what that's like, that's a very unique aspect of this.
Well, that's what makes it very different from visiting work at a gallery, because you'll walk into a studio, and I always encourage all the artists to leave it messy.
They probably don't need much encouragement on that front.
Just leave it as is.
I say, don't clean up too much, but make sure that it's safe. We want the environment to be safe. And yes, you're right. People do want to know, what's behind the work. The finished product is wonderful to see, but how did you get from nothing to something? And these are the kind of conversations that you can engage in with the artists when you visit.
That's exactly the conversations we have all the time about creativity, just creating something from nothing and the process that you go through for that. So even if it's not a specific piece, but just their general process as they create, whether it is art or anything else that people are creating, we're so fascinated by that. Such a great opportunity. We will make sure that we have all of the links, all of the information on our website. We will have it in the show notes as well for this episode. So, and of course, Barbara, just thank you so much. This is, we cannot wait. We are so excited.
I'm even more excited now after talking to you.
I know, me too.
We will see you on August 11th. And obviously this is rain or shine, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, the weather does not affect it.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much. This has been really nice. I appreciate it.
We can't wait. Thank you so much for everything you're doing for the art community in Saugerties.
Absolutely. Such a gift. Thank you so much for your time, Barbara. I appreciate it. We'll see you in August.
Yep. I look forward to meeting you both.
Okay.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Today, we're getting classy with Saugerties-based jewelry designer, Emily Antonian Lee Mandry. Emily is the founder of MLE, an accessories line based on the principles of high-quality materials and unique details. Before launching her eponymous label, Emily spent over 15 years in fashion and digital marketing with a focus on innovative design and emerging brand growth. She now incorporates the firsthand experience she gained in both industries in her work at MLE, with a focus on sustainability and quality. Her designs have been featured in Vogue and Sports Illustrated. And as of April, MLE has a brick and mortar location on Main Street in Saugerties. Thanks for chatting with us today, Emily.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Of course. So, just to get started, tell us how you got into design, or is it just in your DNA?
Sure. So, in terms of, I guess just being predisposed to it, I come from a long line of designers and creatives. My grandmother was a seamstress. My dad's parents were both tailors. So, I'd like to think that that somehow translated to me, that I inherited that. My grandma's brothers worked in the diamond district in New York City. They set stones for jewelry. So, there's always been this creative streak in my family, which has been really cool. And in terms of like my background, the first project I worked on for sewing was like the biggest project was I actually made my prom dress with my grandmother when I was in high school. And that was for me,
Mhm.
the first time that I designed something. We went to the garment district, we bought the fabric together, we picked, I remember there were these pearl buttons that literally had these silk charmeuse loops that you had to close each loop. It was literally a couture gown that we made together. And that was just like my first taste for that. So then, that was in high school and I'd always had that in the back of my mind. I had always been, artistic, creative. I really loved painting. In high school, I was very much into painting. And then when I went to college, I actually ended up at a school that it didn't have a arts program. It wasn't known to be creative. I went to Johns Hopkins, which was kind of like a a wild card for me. But what came out of that, I studied art history. Continued to have an affinity for the arts. I took some art classes at MICA, which was an art school in the area, which is one of the best art schools. And my senior year, when I was at Johns Hopkins, I actually started silkscreen t-shirts as a creative outlet. And I was selling those t-shirts on campus, and I was able to support myself that first summer after graduating with this t-shirt line. And that was in 2009. That was a time where we were in a recession. It was a really bad time to graduate as a liberal arts student, especially for me, art history major. I knew I didn't want to go to grad school for art history, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And that was my first, time supporting myself from pieces that I was making myself. And that was very rewarding for me that I had control of my, you know, my life and able to support myself out of things I was making. So fast forward to, I guess, the first year of that t-shirt company. Within a year of graduating from college, I applied for a part-time MBA program in New York City with NYU Stern. I was accepted, moved to New York City, and my whole perception of what a clothing company could be or a fashion company could be completely changed. So my t-shirt company morphed into a ready-to-wear women's line that I was literally designing prints that I would do pattern making, that I would make these clothing pieces, had collections, and I went to trade shows and I was getting orders from brands such as Urban Outfitters. So that Urban Outfitter order happened within, I'd say, a year of me moving to New York. So first 2 years of me launching this company, started as silkscreen
Wow.
t-shirts, became women's wear, and I was
Wow.
just like flying by the seat of my pants. Didn't know how to do any of this, but because I was young, I had the energy and I was like, I'll just figure it out. So then,
That's so cool.
yeah. So what was interesting about having, these big orders from Urban Outfitters is they would place these huge orders and I wouldn't get paid until after the order shipped. And sometimes these orders would be, 6 months out from when they actually needed the order. So I'd have to fund all this production upfront myself and
Wow.
also start thinking about like, well, what's the next collection going to be? And it became very hard to maintain this. It wasn't sustainable for me, and I was also in grad school part time. I actually had to get a full time job to be able to fund the production for my orders with these big retailers. So
Wow.
it just became this thing that between that and then also just seeing what was happening with these big production orders, the waste being generated when you're cutting the fabric, where do the scraps go? Seeing what actually these orders look like when you're shipping them, the number of boxes, the amount that it costs to ship things back and forth. I'd never been exposed to this before. And for me, it was a big wake up call. And I, at that point, was frankly also a bit burnt out. So once I,
Why?
yeah,
What?
it was a
I can't
lot.
believe how much stuff you had going on. And at this point, you're like 22 years old.
Yeah, I was 22, 23 years
Oh my
old. This was all going on. And, you know, I think also being in grad school, being surrounded by a lot of people that were older than me, that basically a lot of them worked in finance and had families, you know, they were in their mid 30s. So they were in this program because one day they were hoping to be entrepreneurial. And I was on the other side of this. I was entrepreneurial and I was looking to get more business knowledge, you know, business experience to apply to my own business. So what came out of that was I was exposed for the first time to digital marketing. At that point, I'd never seen that before. When I was in college, we didn't have a digital marketing program that didn't exist. You know, I remember in my marketing class,
When we were in college, we
yeah,
didn't have computers.
yeah. So that puts it
That's true.
in perspective. But I remember
Not
like
exactly.
but I remember in my marketing class in college, we had like you know, there were like highlighted keywords in the textbook, and one was about going viral marketing. And viral marketing at that point meant forwarding an email to other people when an email gets forwarded. So yeah, so I was like
when you literally give each other a virus in your computer.
Right.
yeah.
Wow, that story is amazing. It has everything. I love just the atmosphere of creativity and like DIY that you grew up with. We would like to see pictures of that prom dress,
Oh.
by the way. But then also just that spirit of hustle and entrepreneurship. And like you said, I think there's an element of being, you know, 21 or 22 and being like, I'll figure it out. But
Yeah.
I mean, you were doing a lot of stuff. That is a very cool origin story.
Oh, thanks. So then I guess fast forward to where I am now, what ended up happening was I decided to take a break from that first company, worked for about 10 years in fashion, digital marketing, worked at agencies, specializing in digital marketing, e-commerce, and I learned so much. And what was interesting was I had all these ideas about ways we could increase sales or things we could market. And I saw that these ideas were working for these other brands that I was basically consulting for or working for. So at that point, I decided, you know, I've been out of this for about 10 years now, 15 years. I want to try again with my own company, but I want to do things differently. So I decided to do accessories because you didn't have to worry about sizing, which for just in terms of fit issues or even high return rates, the standard return rate for clothing is about 30% for e-commerce, to give you an idea. So I saw that, you know, firsthand at the companies I worked for, but then also just thinking about the bloated inventory, just you have to do these like size runs, this production you have to. So I decided accessories. I love that. It was also something small that didn't take up much space. At that point, I was living in Brooklyn in New York City. I had a very small apartment. So I started again. I did this, and all the experience I had, you know, up to this point, I applied again. And what was interesting was very quickly this new brand that I launched called MLE, which is my initials backwards, but also sounds like my name, Emily, which, you know, I knew I wanted an eponymous brand. I knew it was time to launch myself as a designer in terms of this new effort. So yeah, I mean, it was what happened with that was because I had experience in digital marketing, I was able to run my own ads, and very quickly when I launched, I had a product that went viral. One of my pieces went viral and just took off and was basically like 95% of my sales. And the first 2 years of my company was basically supporting myself off of that. And in the small apartment.
Which piece
I was just
it?
going to ask
Yeah,
now.
so it's the one I'm
which
wearing.
piece?
It's called the Gentlewoman's Agreement. So it features these
Beautiful.
two hands, and it's actually a magnetic clasp.
Ah.
And the reason it's called Gentlewoman's Agreement, so this was an idea I had for a while. Actually, it took me about 3 years to finish this design before I launched. I was like working on it part-time as I was at my last job. But it's two feminine hands. I don't know if you can see. They're not like, they're very like elegant hands. And I love the idea of like gentleman's agreement, that men like agree they're shaking on it. But this was also during like the Me Too movement, and the idea of women supporting other women or helping each other to succeed. So I love this idea of women's empowerment in a form of jewelry. But then what I also liked about this piece is that it's it's minimal enough, but then also makes a statement. So it's a little bold, it's a little edgy. And I found that girls or women, they love buying this piece because it makes them feel strong and,
Yes.
successful, which has been really cool.
Well,
I love
speaking
that.
of that, so I agree with you because I feel a little cringe when someone says statement necklace because it's usually like a big colorful bauble, but that is a very distinct statement, but it's also really elegant and almost minimalist. So I know you can't see, but this is my Medusa medallion, and I
Ooh.
wear her all the time when I want to feel powerful and strong, and I like remind myself that I have my Medusa here. And so when I was trolling around on your website, I came across your goddess collection. I'm obsessed with all of that.
Oh, thank you.
So you really you hit it big with the Gentlewoman's Agreement, and then you branched out into these other lines. So tell us about some of your themes and your inspirations, and the goddess collection in particular, because I love it, but it's all really beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, women's empowerment is a recurring theme throughout my pieces. So we have, the Gentleman's Agreement collection. We also have the Goddess collection that, based on the different stones we're using, they have different attributes and they're associated with different goddesses like Athena and Aphrodite and Juno. So it's another way for my customers, my followers to identify with my pieces and connect. And it's another way for them to, connect with different attributes and feel empowered when they wear their pieces. Besides that, I also have a collection that it's all fried eggs. So it's earrings and matching ring, a signet ring in the shape of a fried egg, and I donate 1% of those proceeds to Planned Parenthood. And I actually launched that when there was all the abortion ban conversation happening a few years ago, and I know we're still going through that, but at least I know I'm doing my part, that I'm able to donate 1% every year to that cause and help Planned Parenthood.
Fantastic.
That's fabulous. But I also love that the egg is a little tongue in cheek.
Yeah, exactly.
That is fantastic. I love that. So in addition to your beautiful aesthetic, your empowering themes and supportive themes, you bring so many other values to your business and working with female artisans and sourcing sustainable materials as much as possible. Can you tell us more about that aspect of your business?
Sure. So the foundations of my business, I think, are based strongly on my experience in the industry in terms of, the waste I saw firsthand for fashion in particular, even the way employees were treated or team members were treated. And it's been a very big foundation for me. When you say sustainable, it's not only in terms of the environment, minimizing waste, being eco-friendly in terms of the materials you're using, but it's also about how you treat your staff and your team and making sure that everyone, is being properly compensated, that everyone feels valued, properly trained. Sustainability goes so much beyond just being eco-friendly and thinking about what your impact is from a physical point of view. And in terms of sustainability from like production, I guess the more traditional sense, I am very careful in terms of when I'm designing a piece, thinking about the components that are involved and what like the traceability is of that material. So, for example, all our fabric handbags, I source that fabric from the garment district in New York, and it's leftover fabric from other designers. I'm never actually creating something from raw materials to do my production, if that makes sense. It's something that already exists. So when we're casting jewelry, we're using recycled metals. We're sourcing components that already exist. We're not having things made from scratch for us. It's never like a raw material. It's always something that already exists. Our hair clips, they're made with cellulose acetate, which is a plant-based material. It's actually wood pulp that they mix with acetic acid, which creates a material that looks like plastic, but it's not. It's actually partially biodegradable. And what I love about this material is that you can shape it and it's very strong. And I use that for my hair clips. So these are all things that, have taken me years to figure out. And it's my responsibility as a designer, when I'm creating things, that I think about what is the lifespan of this thing I'm making? Like what value does it bring to someone? How is it different? Does this need to exist in the world? I mean, there's this statistic that there are enough clothes on the planet right now to dress the next 6 generations of the human race that already exist in the world. So if I'm going to contribute something what is my impact and what does that mean? Like, I don't want to make something that, falls apart, breaks, and it just ends up in a landfill, or create too much and then I have to put it on sale because I have to get rid of it. It's something I really think about a lot.
I absolutely I just love the idea that you're thinking beyond. I love that you're thinking of the sustainability, like you said, not going to the landfills and not adding to this excess that we already have in the world. But I respect so much the idea, what you said about when you think about the people doing the work that you work with. And I just, my first thought that came to me as you're talking about that, like, what an incredible world, what an incredible business world we would all be in if more people, even if not everybody, but just if more people thought like that,
Hmm.
just whether it was small businesses, large corporations, if more people had that attitude, that forethought to just treat people respectfully. I mean, what a novel thought,
But how do we make a sustainable ecosystem for our workforce where people can
Correct.
thrive, people can have meaningful work and make enough money to sustain themselves and have a balance outside of work and feel valued? And
Right,
we
right. The
don't we
work-life
don't talk about that
balance.
enough at
But
all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that novel of an idea. Treat people kindly, treat people respectfully.
Hmm.
It goes beyond just yes, absolutely ecosystem and sustainability, but on a human level. And I absolutely love that that was the first part of that you brought up. I respect that so much.
Oh,
It's
thank you.
fantastic.
Thank you. I think
Yeah.
also, in general, the idea of manufacturing, I think the end customer, the user, doesn't really necessarily think a human being made this, especially when it looks so perfect. They think, oh, this was made by a machine. But the amount of time and skill needed to make these kinds of pieces that we're making, it's truly an art. And these makers, these craftspeople that I'm working with, it's highly skilled labor and they need to be compensated that amount. And I see that a lot, with fast fashion or things. It's just like it doesn't, if you crunch the numbers for whatever that price is that something is selling at, it just doesn't make sense, right? And
No.
that's something that I think a lot of people are just not aware of, and there needs to be a lot of education around that. And that's something I'm trying to do with my brand Emily by having my studio in Saugerties, New York. I have a store now around the corner. When people come in, we explain, we make everything actually around the corner. People are welcome to come and visit the studio and see us making our pieces there. And these things take a lot of time to make.
Absolutely.
Well, so speaking of Saugerties, so I love Saugerties. I'm a big Saugerties fan. I'm from Poughkeepsie originally.
Oh,
I've been living away from the Hudson Valley for a while. I am relocating back as soon as possible, and I really have my eye on Saugerties. So you made the move up from Brooklyn to Saugerties in 2020. So was that a COVID powered decision, or how did you end up making the move upstate, and why Saugerties in particular?
sure. So at that time, when my husband and I decided we were interested in moving upstate, we were living in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, and we were living actually above a bar on the main street of Greenpoint, and we literally heard the subway every 7 minutes. The whole apartment would shake. The people at the bar downstairs would be smoking cigarettes. Every time you open the window, the cigarette smoke would come in. So we were just like accosted on so many ways. We didn't have like space to spread out. We didn't have freedom. We didn't have outdoor space. And we started coming upstate just on the weekends as a way to get away. And then it became a 3-day weekend, a 4-day weekend, trying to figure out, okay, now we like this area so much. Maybe we should start looking for a house upstate because it seems like we're coming up a lot. And it would be nice to have, to be able to have a break from the city. So we actually bought our house in 2019, October 2019. Yes, October 2019, and the plan was to split our time. And then but then I also have to say my husband and I are a bit intuitive. Like we get like downloads. I don't know if you guys are into that at all, but sometimes you just get a sense, a strong feeling we need to do this. And so we just felt very strongly. We actually bought our house without even seeing what the village of Saugerties looked like. We truly lucked out because the village is such a gem in terms of what's
You
available
could not
there.
have timed it better
Yeah.
Yeah,
because you just beat that rush by 6 months of everybody else suddenly deciding they wanted to get out of the city.
Yeah.
that's incredible.
And then the house that we bought, so even back then it was competitive. it was, we had made offers at other places. There were bidding wars, and the house that we got was actually a fixer-upper, it's a complete gut reno. So that was our COVID project. But because, we got the house early, it's amazing how much, the expenses or the cost of building supplies has gone up since then, but we just
Oh, and
completely
then there were
lucked
the
out.
shortages,
Oh,
right? Like you must
yes,
have
the
had trouble
shortages.
getting lumber and all of that
Yeah,
stuff. Wow.
yeah. So that was, my husband and I, we did a lot of the renovation work ourselves. And we're still working on it. I'm almost done. But it's just been an amazing creative outlet for us. And that's something my husband and I are both very creative, and we just like having the space up here to just expand into whatever you want. So many interests. Like he took up carpentry, and now he's on his John Deere outside mowing the grass. He's like, love. I hope you're not hearing it in the background, by the way. I told him we're on a podcast. But and like for
Does
me,
he need any friends? Because Jenny's husband needs friends, and they sound like they would be
They're
perfect for each
perfect. I
other.
know. My husband was in construction. Now he's like in project management and construction. He works for a big home builder, but same thing. It's like, let me tell you, my house is never done.
Yeah.
Lived here for a very long time. And we literally just had decking material delivered today because he's expanding the back deck. But I'm not going to complain because that means I'm getting the hot tub that I've been asking for a long
Where?
time. So,
Outside of the screens?
yeah, we have
Outside of
like
the
that
screen
little
portion?
deck.
Where
We
he
have
has
that
the
little
grill?
small,
Yeah.
the grill. We're like having a big deck and then a hot tub. So
Oh, wow.
I've been asking for that for a long time. So I'm very
Will
excited.
it be in before I'm there in a few weeks?
No.
Hurry up, Matt. Come on.
No, but the deck might be. The hot tub probably not, but the deck might be.
Okay.
But I totally get all of that, and even the sense that you just got that gut feeling to go for it and do it. And it sounds also a lot like our friend Matt Zucker from the podcast City It, because him and his husband, they were coming up. They actually had the place, but it was just like their weekend home. So they were coming up on weekends. Then it was 3-day weekends. Then it was like, oh, we don't want to go home. Let's just do it one more day. There was 4-day weekends, and it was just kept getting stretched out until finally they were like, I guess we're just gonna stay. So they were working from home. So they just kept, stretching their time out. And now they have like, his husband has this big garden, and they like are like little farmers in their overalls. It's just like,
That's the pull of the Catskills, though.
It
You
is,
get
it
immersed
is.
in that beauty and then the spaciousness that really encourages creativity. I mean, you have the creativity anyway, but like you were saying, that closed in feeling in the city, and then you get up and you're like, we can expand in all kinds of directions now that we have not just the physical space, but the head space, because you're not having that sensory overload of the subway and cigarette smoke and bar traffic.
Oh my God.
It makes a big difference.
And I love Saugerties. I am from Hurley, grew up in Hurley, moved away for a while, college and afterwards. And then young 20s, I was like, oh my God, what was I thinking getting out of that area? I can't wait to move back, So as a young adult, moved back to the area. Everyone listens to this podcast has heard my story a million times, but, moved back to the area. But I sort of like circled for a while. I moved first to Rhinebeck, then actually I moved to Saugerties, and I was renting this house on like 7 acres in Saugerties, and I loved it. There were like trails and streams behind the house, but it was a rental. I tried to do a rent to own, but it just didn't, they weren't doing it. They weren't going for it. So, but I loved that house. I loved that property, and I loved Saugerties, the village, everything about Saugerties I loved. And then moved to an area between like Glasgow area, between Saugerties and Kingston. And then this house opened up right across the street from my parents, and single mom with young kids. So I ended up at that time. So I ended up buying a house right back on the same street that I grew up on in Hurley. But I absolutely love Saugerties. I'm up there quite often. So it's a great area. So the latest evolution of your brand is a brick and mortar in Saugerties, right? It's a storefront right on Main Street. How did that decision to open a physical location come about? What was your vision, or what is your vision for the space and the community now that you're there?
So there's a few things going on. So my brand, up to this point of having the store, I launched basically as an e-commerce expert and was able to apply that. So I had a big e-commerce business, and then it became wholesale, became really big. And within the past year or so, both of those, I guess, aspects of my business and almost every other person's retail business has completely changed. So in terms of e-commerce, running ads on Instagram, which is how I used to really grow my business and get the majority of my sales, that was no longer feasible. The price had gone up. There was a change in the algorithm and tracking with the iOS 14 update, getting really technical, but that really affected my business. With wholesale, I had another, a lot of big wholesalers going out of business. And one of them actually that I had been working with for almost a year, they went bankrupt and they never paid me. And just going through that experience of, feeling like, you're robbed and there's nothing you can do and you're not getting that money and not having control, that made me start thinking a lot about how am I going to grow my business? If e-commerce isn't working, if wholesale, I can't rely on that, what's the next best, like what's the next thing? And also I'm in I'm about to start my 6th year of business now of having my brand Emily. And the traditional way to grow a fashion brand or a retail brand is at some point you need to have a brick and mortar location. You need to have a flagship so people can experience the product in person, touch it, feel it, see it. No matter how good your e-commerce experience is, there's just nothing like seeing it in person. So I was thinking about that. Then I also have a really good friend of mine. Her name is Kim Chambers. She curates and sells vintage clothing that she sources all over the Hudson Valley. And I had become very good friends with her. We had done a pop-up in Saugerties in the Village last year for about 2 weeks. That was successful. And we had been in contact since then, just talking about, oh, if we like, would we ever open it? Would she ever open a store? Would I ever open a store? Like, what would it be? Where would it be? And I felt very strongly about it being in Saugerties for multiple reasons. The idea of working for yourself, having control over your commute is like a big thing. And for me, I'm already in Saugerties thinking about why would I drive, half an hour, 45 minutes somewhere else, like, and I'm working for myself. Also, Saugerties, is an amazing place. The Village has so many beautiful, fun places to go. For coffee, for shopping. And I wanted to contribute to that. I felt like it was time, that I'd seen a lot of almost like turnover in terms of retail stores in the Village, a lot of opportunity there. And I wanted, to get more involved in what was going on in the Village and help build the local economy. And part of this is also I'm actually working with the mayor and the supervisor of Saugerties as like another project that we're working on a marketing strategy for Saugerties. So we're starting to do that. So thinking about how can we market Saugerties as a destination for people to meet up, for friends to meet up, to spend the day in Saugerties, because it has a lot of potential, but it seems a bit overlooked in terms of destinations in the Hudson Valley. But if you look at it, it's a very beautiful village. It's very picturesque. We have these bluestone, paving. We have these cute lampposts, a lot of brick buildings that are older. And there's a lot of creative artists up here in this area.
So, do you know our friend Meredith Morabito?
Yes, I do.
She was on our.
We
met her at the Garlic Festival, and she was on either our 2nd or 3rd episode. We're obsessed with Callie and all of her work. And I was actually going to call her because when Kiana reached out to us and said, hey, do you guys know Emily? And then we're like, God, that's great stuff. And we're obsessed with Saugerties. And we've been dying. It's been on our calendar since we talked to Meredith probably 5 months ago, the Saugerties Art Tour.
Oh, yes.
Which is that second weekend in August. And so the plan for this episode is that we're also going to have Barbara Bravo come on.
Oh, I love Barbara.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love all the Saugerties love that is coming together here. And we will definitely be in Saugerties for the art tour because we're going to Meredith's farm. We're going to go see Callie and we're, see what else we see on the art tour. And so we'll creep on you and come into your store too.
Oh, perfect. That sounds great.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends from high school, even from that I graduated with in Kingston, and they ended up in Saugerties, very artistic, creative people. They have shops and, art studios and a lot of creative people in Saugerties. And I think it was a lot more overlooked even years ago. And it's definitely come into its own a little bit, but I think I agree. It could definitely, get more recognition. It deserves a lot more recognition for sure. It has the recognition.
But don't do that for like another 6 months because I need to still be able to afford to buy something. So once I buy in Saugerties, then you guys can go hog wild with the marketing. Okay.
I think it also like has a lot of recognition for like the horse shows,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
like it gets like overrun by the horse shows. Yep. The hits in August, I guess, right? But other than that, I love it. Anyway, I love Saugerties.
Me too. I love the Garlic Festival. Love. All right. So we love Saugerties. So we ask everybody for their Hudson Valley greatest hits. So you can stay in Saugerties, or you can tell us anything you love anywhere in the Hudson Valley, whether it's your favorite bookshops or pizzeria or coffee place or bakery. Just what are some of the other places that you love in the area?
Yeah, well, just thinking about, how much time I spend in Saugerties, I love going to Josie's. It's a cafe on Partition. She has amazing coffee and also food, and it's just a really nice vibe. I also tend to go to Inquiring Minds, that the bookstore on the corner of Main and Partition. It's just for inspiration. I usually go during my afternoon like break when I'm in my studio. I go and get a coffee there too, and then I'll look through the books while they're making my coffee, and it's just like so inspiring. You get transported to different worlds, and it's just such a fun place. And then besides that, my really good friend David, he owns a store called Catch Me When You Can. He has the most beautiful flowers I've ever seen. They're so luxurious, and he's also about to start selling amazing antique furniture in his location as well. He's been renovating the store. So those are my like top 4 Saugerties, and then starting to venture out, in terms of things to do in the area. I love this new Indian restaurant that just opened up in Woodstock called Nirvana. I think it's the best Indian food I've ever had. It's like farm to
Oh,
table Indian.
I'm gonna have to check that out. I love
Yeah.
Indian food.
So now when my husband and I go out to eat, that's just our go-to. I mean, we also go to Buns in Saugerties. I don't know if you've been to Buns. That's like
They have one in Kingston too.
yeah, it's so good.
I love buns.
And then in terms of like other things I like doing in the area, I go to Falling Waters a lot for a hike. I have 2 dogs, 2 poodles that I take them with me. Or I'll take them to Hudson, and we'll just walk up and down that main street and then get ice cream at Culture Cream. I don't know if you've been there, but she has amazing like lacto fermented ice cream that it's healthy but it's also very delicious. And then we're also really into music, like the music scene. So we go to this place in Glen Falls. It's called Glen Falls House. They have like a little music venue. And what's crazy about this music venue is the owners of that club used to own a club, or that no, they do. They do. So the owners of that club own a club in Greenpoint, like almost across the street from where we used to live. It's so weird, like how this, I don't know, this energy that, you find people like whoever you were with around in the city, like we're all up here now, and that's been crazy. There's also Avalon Lounge and Catskills. They have some really cool shows, but then also they serve Korean food, which I love. I find it really hard. I don't know about you both, but I find it really hard to find good ethnic food up here. That's one thing I miss about the city. And the Korean food there is really good. I really enjoy it.
I have not found any great Korean food around here for sure. I used to work in the area in Manhattan where there was like tons of Korean food right in Midtown. So it's very hard to find that. But there is some really good ethnic food. But yeah, you have to know where to go for sure. But that's good to know. I love Indian food, and I haven't been to that one yet. So I usually go over to Red Hook actually for really good Indian food. The Red Hook Curry House
some
is
great
delicious.
insider tips there that you gave us.
Yeah, that's
places
really good
I
to
haven't
know.
heard of.
Oh,
So,
good.
yeah.
I know. And Glens Falls is up there, so I don't usually go all the way up there. So that's good to know.
Yeah.
That is very, very cool. And you said something about the antiques in Saugerties. That is another thing about Saugerties that I love, are all the antique shops in Saugerties. So many great places for that.
All right. So maybe we need your friend David to come on the podcast, because I am fascinated with antiques. And I think a lot of people feel this way. You love to go into the antique shops and look at everything and admire it and imagine it in your house, but then you just wander away because I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know if it's real. I don't know if it's a real antique. Like, I can't look at something and be like, that is definitely 17th century French from the Louis XIV period. Or if it's like something somebody bought at like Montgomery Ward in 1987, and it's just, I don't know. I would love to be a person who is conversant in antiques. Or maybe your friend would say, you don't need to do that. You just have to go in and like vibe with a piece, and you can mix and match, and it doesn't matter if you don't know the piece's provenance. So that's really interesting to me. And I feel like when I grow up, I want to know about antiques. So maybe he can come on season 2 and school us.
I think we
antiques.
should. We should have David on. That's what I feel about antiques. That. I used to feel like I needed to know like the value, not even necessarily like the time period or where it's from, but is there value in this? Like, I wanted to find some hidden, piece that was like really valuable. But then I was like, but I don't care if it's from Montgomery Ward's from 1987. Like, I find value in this piece because I think it's quirky and cool and I want it in
Right.
my house. Like, it
Yeah.
has value to me, you know? So I've kind of come around with the antiquing and I
Well,
just,
and
it's
also
just
the
got to speak to you.
sustainability that we talked
Right.
about, and you're talking about
Exactly.
fast fashion and not having things end
Exactly.
up in landfills. So on
Mhm.
our episode, I think it's episode 4, we talked to our friends Susanna and LV from Found and Fixed. And they have a workshop in Highland. They're a co-op, and they take solid wood furniture that would otherwise have ended up in landfills, and they rescue it and fix it up and give it new life. And so they're all about, you know, keeping those things out of landfills, and they do gorgeous work. And so that there's something to be said for that too, even if it is, I don't know, even if it, well, it's solid wood, so not IKEA, but you know, even a type of piece that you bought, maybe a quick convenience thing, there are things that you can do to repurpose it for your space and not just have to chuck everything in a landfill.
Yeah, and I just
Mhm.
love the idea that like it had a life before. I wonder what it where it lived before. I wonder what its life was before, you know? I just
Totally.
love that. I
Mhm.
love that
Yeah.
idea. Oh, that's great. Well, Emily, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun chatting with you, and we are definitely planning a day in Saugerties during the art tour in August. So we will absolutely pop into the shop. We'll have to plan, make sure that you're going to be there. In the meantime, we will put links to your website and your socials in the show notes and on the episode page. Thanks so much, Emily. This has been great.
Thank you for having me.
This was fun. It was great to meet you.
Wonderful to meet you both. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all our listeners. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to help support the Valley Girls, please follow our podcast from our show page on whichever platform you listen from. Leave a rating and review, and please spread the word and share our podcast with others. We really appreciate your support. To stay up to date with the Valley Girls and for more content, you can find us at valleygirlspodcast.com, and you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Links to all our social media accounts are in the show notes. And you can also connect to them through our homepage at valleygirlspodcast.com. Thank you so much for listening. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
The music for this episode is by Robert Burke Warren, entitled Painting a Vast Blue Sky, and can be found on his album Redheaded Friend, available on iTunes and Spotify, and at the link in the show notes.